Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. 5 reasons to buy silver, and 5 reasons not to. Let's explore! I found this interesting article from MoneyWeek.com that talks about this. I like to look at the opposite side, look at the pluses and negatives of all issues. I think it's good to critically think, especially for those of us who spend our hard-earned money on metals like this. You know, whenever we do buy, we're adding ounces to our stack, but we're spending money too. We're spending money on a metal that could very well go down just as easily as it could go up. And yes, even in this type of economic environment, you know, when most people think that silver is undervalued and should be going up considering inflation and all the other factors that are at play. So what do? We continue to buy. We continue to make purchases thinking that maybe, just maybe, we're going to see the metal rise up. You know, it's frustrating because we hear this adage about silver going to the moon. It's going to skyrocket to the moon, so it's time to stack up. It's time to increase our holdings of silver because we know that in due course, and probably soon, it's going to go to the moon. And so we keep on stacking. Keep on stacking in the free world. Indeed. So that's what we do. But let's talk about these 5 reasons why we should stack silver, and maybe let's get a little perspective here. Balance is the key here, and that's one thing I try to do, and I like how this author of this piece does that as well. The first reason is silver is cheap. The all-time high for silver was $50 an ounce, a price set a long time ago in the midst of time in 1980. Was $50, and then it retested that level in 2011. The retest failed, and I would make the argument that even in 1980, whenever silver was bought, well, the prices didn't stay there for very long. So if you bought in 2011, well, you were in for a hurting for sure, because the prices plummeted not long after whenever you made that buy. And today, silver sits around $22. And, well, it's $22 and about 50 cents as of the recording of this video. And that's about 55% lower. And it stayed longer at that level than it was at the all-time high. Is there any other asset, let alone a commodity, that is trading at such a discount to its all-time highs, especially with all the currency debasement that has gone on? It's so cheap when you think about that. So why not add a few more ounces of silver? Heck, it may not be a bad idea to even spend higher premiums for silver eagles. Because number 2's reason is silver should be much more expensive. There's roughly 15 times as much silver in the Earth's crust as there is gold. Thus, the silver price should be 15 times the price of gold. Indeed, that is the historical average, and by historical average, it means in ancient Mesopotamia, in ancient Greece, in the Dark and Middle Ages, and an early modern era right up to the 20th century. Today, the silver price is about 79 times the price of gold. A return to the historic average would mean silver is 5 times higher, above $100 an ounce, if you figure by these measurements, and that's assuming there's no appreciation in the gold price. What's more, silver gets consumed and so no longer exists, well, at least no longer exists in terms of being able to buy it in coin in round and bar form, but that is the measure of how we weigh this out, is, you know, how much silver is left in the earth that we can buy right now in physical form. That is another reason why it might be a good idea to stack a little bit of silver. And The third reason is the silver price is suppressed. You've heard me talk about this, and you know my feelings on it. The author here says that the amount of silver sold forward on the COMEX amounts to more than 1 year's supply. In other words, the silver that has been sold can't be delivered. Sooner or later, this means there is going to be a run on physical silver, and the price will go bananas. And we know, you've heard me talk about in a recent video, the SLV, the ETFs. What's happening with the ETFs is a lot of the same type of thing, where there is no constraints on the silver that is being purchased as a way to hedge yourself in the stock market. There's no constraints, and so therefore we might as well buy it because it's suppressed, and sooner or later that is going to break loose and silver will run to the moon. The fourth reason is silver has a myriad of uses. Very, very true. Silver is the best thermal and electrical conductor of all the metals. So every phone, every computer, every TV, every decent battery, every photovoltaic cell, solar panel contains silver. Before the invention of antibiotics, silver was the world's most important antimicrobial agent. These antimicrobial non-toxic qualities mean it has huge demand in medicine and consumer products, from biocides to fridges to even paint, and clothing as well. Its high reflectivity means it has demand in jewelry, silverware, mirrors, and solar energy. It is malleable and ductile, which means it can be beaten into sheets, drawn into wire, reduced into nanosilver, or turned into paste. Thus, a plethora of industrial applications require it. Then there are its catalytic properties, which means it finds its use in plastics, nuclear energy, brazing and soldering to photosensitivity. There's nothing short of amazing how many uses this incredible versatile metal is. In fact, it is the most versatile metal out there, hands down. And if you want picks and shovels play on cutting-edge technology and man's never-ending progress, silver is it. Everything uses it. The fifth reason is that silver is money. The word even means money. A pound was once a pound of sterling silver. Argent is silver. Plata is silver. In this age of relentless currency debasement, money printing, and inflation, you need to protect yourself. Silver as a monetary and precious metals does that. In fact, silver is the one metal and one asset that has been used as money longer than any other in world history. Think about that for a moment. And that's not in this piece, but silver has been used as money longer than any other, including paper money, including these. Silver has been money for that long. And by the way, it should be noted that even though silver does not circulate as currency these days, I like to refer to it as hibernating money. And so therefore, we know, since it is money, and since we stack it, and even governments mint coins with denominations on them, I think that's a good reason to accumulate a little bit more silver. So there you go. So stack on, right? For all those reasons, it's probably a good idea to add a little bit of silver into your portfolio, into your stack. Stacking on with silver. It's an amazing metal indeed. And it's nice to look at too. As you can see here, we're trying to get a good view of the silver. So now that we've seen the 5 reasons why you should stack silver, reasons to buy it, let's take a look at 5 reasons not to touch silver. For the rebuttals now, we said the first one before was silver was cheap, but the reason not to buy silver is because silver isn't cheap. That's reason number 1. Those 2 all-time highs are illusory figures. A 1980 high came from the end of the inflation of the 1970s when the Hunt brothers infamously attempted to corner the market and triggered a panic. The 2011 high came after a speculative frenzy accompanied by a false silver shortage narrative at the end of the decade-long bull market. While those highs do show what's possible, they mean nothing, especially considering they were for a very short amount of time. And also, the one thing that they're not going to be talking about in this thing, but it should be worthy of mention, is premiums have increased by percentage and by dollar amount. The premiums are rising for silver because of the demand and because of inflation. So therefore, it's expensive, and you don't have as much to show for it when you go to sell it, even though most of the time you will get above spot, even for generic rounds. It does not equate to the amount that you put into it when you buy it. So in other words, this generic round here, you may pay $3 to $4 over spot for it at your LCS or even online, but when you go to sell it, they may give you maybe 50 cents over spot or $1 over spot at most. And for Silver Eagles, you may pay $10, $12 over spot for them, but only sell it back for $4 over spot. And so there is that spread. That is a risk. So silver is not cheap, and that can work against you, and that's one reason to not buy. The number 2 reason, ratios don't matter. Boy, that's exactly right. Who cares what the historic average is? There may be 15 times more silver in the Earth's crust, but it's a lot easier to mine than gold is. Indeed, most silver is produced as a byproduct of mining for other metals, zinc especially. And they don't talk about this in this particular point here, but being that silver is mined as a byproduct of other metals, it's a lot cheaper. On average, at least before the pandemic, it was about $4 per ounce. Probably by now it's a little bit higher, but probably not by much. Many of the world's largest silver producers are not even silver companies. Glencore, Codelco, Vedanta, Southern Copper, Polymetal, Newmont. Silver makes up such a small part of their revenue that the price is almost unimportant. And by the way, you have certain mining companies like First Majestic who have got it down to science, and they're really working at trying to get more silver, but they're also focusing a lot on gold as well. Silver is less and less being mined as a primary metal. Most of it is mined as a byproduct. So that's something to consider here too. And here is the reality, folks, and this is very true. The market sets the price, not the Earth's crust, and not fixed ratios either. 3, this is very interesting. This is kind of speaking my language. Silver isn't being suppressed. This is interesting, folks. Price manipulation stories have been doing the rounds since the 1970s. They have lost their credibility. The derivatives market is always bigger than the physical markets. Exactly right. If you looked at the magnitude of the global derivatives market, you'd be packing your tins and guns and making for the hills tomorrow with lots of silver coins. And by the way, I will clarify this because manipulation does exist. Manipulation is there. It's been recognized. I've documented it on this channel. Every chance I get, if it's something that is valid and is investigated, and even some of the major media outlets cover it, such as the manipulation that JP Morgan has been involved in. But that happens where the price moves up or down in order for the selfish ambitions of those engaged in the practice, much of it illegal, such as spoofing. So when you see that happen within organizations such as JP Morgan, which is a big organization, make no mistake about that, it happens in other organizations too. If they can do it to make money, they'll make money on the way up or the way down. They can fix that price, especially with high-frequency trading and spoofing. See, there it is. But what suppression is when you have a coordinated effort between financial institutions to suppress the price, to keep the price down in order to bring excitement away from precious metals and silver in order to prop up the dollar or some other institution because they feel threatened by silver. And there's just not been any evidence to really bear that out. We know the derivatives markets are bigger, but it's only when you realize that most of them cancel each other out that the calmness returns. If the price is suppressed, there's nothing you can do anyway, only worry about what you can affect, and all that. Let nefarious silver price manipulations narratives be somebody else's problem. And that's why I don't get into a huge debate about this, because let's just give them the, let's say it is occurring, well, then that's an opportunity. If you really do believe that, then you should be stocking up like crazy. But then there's a fear of that if you stock up on silver because the price is suppressed so low, and then it just keeps going lower and lower and lower, you're going to eventually wear yourself out and thinking that they're getting away with it, and you're going to just throw your hands up and give up. And you shouldn't. You should not have unrealistic expectations of silver's price. The fact remains is that manipulation does exist. Price suppression has not been proven to be the case between financial institutions. That's the difference. And I think that the author here missed that mark in his kind of poorly worded section here. But nonetheless, let's move on to the fourth reason why you shouldn't buy silver. Silver is useful, but you don't need much. So he says, yes, silver's myriad uses are amazing, but the amount of silver required for pretty much all of them is minuscule. So it doesn't have much effect on prices. Current physical supplies meet demand, particularly when you favor in recycling. If there was a genuine shortage, you'd know about it quickly. There isn't. That's why the price is low. I will kind of preface that, or I'll kind of qualify this to say that many of the experts really do believe that this year and next year there will be somewhat of a shortage. They are preparing for it because of the demand. And there has been years past when there has been slight deficits in silver supply. Yea, though, it has not been enough to affect the price. So there can be somewhat of a shortage, but not enough to affect the price. And how do we know? Because if there was this shortage, we wouldn't be able to buy these things, really, almost at all. But when you take into account bullion demand in bars, rounds, and coins, that is minuscule. It's about 22 to 25% of all silver demand is in bullion products. And so when that stuff runs out, it is the product that is there's a shortage of, and we've seen that last year. And there's been a lot of demand for this stuff, but it's not been so much that it has had a great effect on price. And I think that is a lot of it is the separation of the two markets, the physical and the paper markets, the ETFs and the like. And I think that is why silver is not cheap, because of the higher premiums, because of the great demand. And this is why there's that separation. And the fifth reason, which is something very much we should take into account here, because silver, he says, money has moved on. And that is the case where we have stopped using silver as money, and we have used dollars as money. Silver may have been money once upon a time, but it isn't now, he says. I do disagree with that. It hasn't been money for 100 years or more, and actually I disagree with that too. It's only been since 1964 that it has not been money. And it has been used as currency regardless. Just because something doesn't circulate as currency does not mean it's not money. Look at gold. Gold is a tier 1 asset. And even though silver isn't listed as a tier 1 asset, it does not mean that it's the attributes of, it does not mean it is not fungible, it's not a store of value, it doesn't hold all of those properties. But nonetheless, it says, he says it's unlikely to ever be again. It's as irrelevant to money as the horse is to transport. Money is no longer physical, it is digital. And cryptocurrencies are the money of the future. Metal isn't, he says. And again, I disagree with that, but nonetheless. As for being a hedge against inflation, silver's been useless, he says. Now, this is kind of harsh here, this number 5. How much money has been printed since 1980? How much has currency been debased? And silver is trading at the same price it was 40 years ago. It's been a rotten inflation hedge. And I don't know, at the same price as it was 40 years ago, we'd have to kind of look at the prices to see where it is. But if you're looking at a particular date or a month 40 years ago and now, pick a month and 40 years ago to kind of where it is now, and let me know. I guess it's around 1980. and it was much higher then, actually. Nonetheless, or 82, I guess it was starting to fall in 82. But again, you look at the long scale term of the chart and average out what it has done over the past 100 years, and I think it has proven itself over that 100 years. So he finishes off and says 5 reasons to own silver and 5 reasons not to. But the part of this is it almost directly contradicts each other, and he says about how there's balance. And he says that he owns silver. I don't think I've ever known as an investment with as much potential, but it never delivers. But the problem is it's not an investment, and that's where his mistake is too. It's merely a hedge, or should be seen as a hedge. And the thing is with silver, the problem with silver is you've got to be able to buy it. You got to be a little bit smarter about buying it because of the high premiums and because of the price fluctuations and volatility. You got to utilize smart dollar cost averaging these days in order for it to really serve as that hedge. So it's a little bit tricky, but I do believe in it. I believe in being realistic about silver and being balanced in the viewpoints here about how you stack it. And so therefore, I think some of his reasons not to buy were a little bit harsh, and I think some of the reasons to buy it were a little over the top. But hey, you want to talk about the extremes, and and I'm not one of these guys that is a middle of the road type of guy. I'm very ideological, but maybe in the case of silver, I'm a bit more balanced in my viewpoint. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Interesting article, thought-provoking at best. And I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.